Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're actually joined in with Mo again, and this is I believe this might be the first video for the exercise library. So today what we're going to demonstrate for you guys, number one thing, is biasing a lat pull down or a pull down to become an actual lat pull down. Now what do I mean by that? Mo, go ahead and tell us how, when you do a lot of the wide grips or the overhand grip pull downs, how it doesn't actually train your lats. It does train your lats, but it just doesn't bias it as much as we would like it to.
Yeah, so the first thing with the wide grip pull down is if your man comes in front of me and just gets his hand in the position of a wide grip pull down, and then when he pulls his elbows down, they will travel backwards. So this position gives mechanical advantage for our upper back to work and not our lats. Our lats do some work, but if we're trying to bias the lats, then we can first assess the range of motion of the lats. So this happens by protracting and then going up. It's like you're getting something from a cupboard, and then stop when you feel that you ran into a block.
Right there.
Right there. So here we are lengthening the lats, and then when we want to start the pull down, we focus on getting our elbows down towards our hips and stopping there. So this is a fully shortened lats. So you see the difference between this and between a wide grip pull down, where his upper back will do most of the work and the rear delts.
So one of the things that I remember that I've actually learned from someone online was from John Meadows, rest in peace, was the fact that the way you train back is solely dependent on the angle your elbow is pointing.
Arm path.
Yeah, your arm path and your elbow path. So that wherever your elbow is pointing. So let's say I was doing a row. Let's say if I was doing a row and I end up past my body, we can clearly see that my elbow is pointing towards my upper back versus back. So whenever we get humeral extension past the body, we understand there's a lot more upper back than lats.
Yeah.
The lats will genuinely have a lot more focus in pulling down rather than pulling back. Another big mistake that we know that we see a lot with lats is people don't understand that the lats don't actually insert into the scapula. So the scapula actually doesn't have a role in retracting to pulling the lats down. So a common thing that you'd probably see, what's the most lat bias pull down that you would see with other people that would probably want to do it, is probably those arching and pulling close.
Arching and then retracting the scapula and then starting the move. So scapular retraction will happen, but you don't need to focus on doing it. So it will happen whether you like it or not. Like your nervous system knows how to move the scapula, right? So
the idea is scapulohumeral rhythm rather than scapular retraction and then pulling. Same thing goes for bench press. So actually holding your scapula back is kind of stupid, because let's say a bench press or a press would kind of portray like punching someone. You wouldn't really punch someone with your shoulders holding back. They
there
need
should
to
be
work.
some protraction happening, right?
Yeah, I would 100% say that when you're under a bench press, the idea is that you kind of think about it as if you're rowing your way back.
Yeah.
That's my biggest cue for that.
Yeah.
Now, without getting off topic, let's go back on the lats. The idea is we want to have the lats lengthened at the top of the movement. So by doing that, we actually need the shoulder blade to be protracted. That's how you end up getting your lats to be basically stretched out. The way you understand your lats active range of motion is you protract as if you're reaching for something, and then you reach up, and before your humerus actually internally rotates, you need to stop right there, and that's pretty much it. And then basically the idea is you get the cable and the line of resistance to line up into your hand from there. Now this is a really good example because I have been doing lat pull-downs here for a long time, and I always used to tell Mo that I never actually feel like my lat was actually working. And feeling is another topic to talk about, but basically my lat never actually got hurt, no matter how much volume I would do to it, not even barely a bit of soreness. Basically it was kind of like the stimulus to fatigue ratio, the fatigue was way too high and the stimulus was almost none. And going back and overthinking about my setup and everything, I just came to the idea of understanding that yes, I would line up standing, but seated I would be down here, and I'm actually pulling from up. So this would actually replicate a wider pull down rather than an actual lat pull down. So what I went and I did was I used a daisy chain. Now, you guys don't need to do this as long as you understand that the line of resistance needs to line up into your lat. Now, simply in another gym with with an actual pull-down machine, you can just bring the cable handle a little bit lower to line up into your hands. But here, what we do is if you don't have the option of being able to do that, you can use a daisy chain. I got this off of Amazon. It wasn't that expensive. You can attach it up to the movement. So now this will actually give you a little bit more space to step back. Then you can actually clearly see that my lat is completely in line with the pull down. Now, so if we were to show how we would actually set up a bilateral lat pull down, now this is a attachment bar that you guys don't need to use. If you want to use something similar, you guys could use something like this. Now, Mo can explain the arm width with how wide you have to hold with these.
Yeah.
And if you guys don't end up using one of those, or you have something like this, you can take something like this and then just put your D grips up on here, which will just pretty much give, yeah. Go ahead, Mo, explain how wide you actually have to hold for it to become a lat pull down.
In a lat pull down, we want to be at least our shoulder width. So we don't want to go a bit wide. We don't want to go too wide. We don't want to go too narrow.
Try and face
We need to just align the line of pull with our lats. Okay.
So if we end up going too wide, like we said, it's going to end up hitting the upper back. Yeah. All right. So we're going to set up this daisy chain for a lat bias pull down, and we're going to show you guys the difference between a good lat bias pull down on how it works by the fact that you actually need to initiate the movement by bracing your abs rather than just pulling and actually arching. Another thing, let's say arching. If I was to arch and I was to pull down, let's say if I was to do close grip, it solely depends. So probably from pulling down from here to here, it might still be doing lats.
Yes.
But from here to here, that's probably not so much lats. So the whole range of motion is probably not lats.
So we're not saying that the lats will never work in a wide grip pull down or any other variation. It's just gonna work less than what we will show you.
So basically, guys, now we have actually set up the bench. The idea behind the bench is to just provide some more assistance in stabilizing. There is a variation that you can do to bias your lats in a pull down without the bench, which we will run over after this. But the idea right now is to take out the abs as much as possible, use a bench to brace, and to just pull down as much as possible using the abs. The other variation of a pull down, it will bias your lats, but the biggest stabilizer is your abs during it, which is arguable in how much fatigue to stimulus ratio your lats are getting out of it. So I think that's a little bit interesting. But you guys can see now that I've actually set up the handle using a daisy chain, and I put the bench far back enough for it to be in my lat in my lat active range. Now, if you guys can see here, I've also put a block. The reason behind the block is that so I don't end up arching. The more I actually end up arching in this exercise, the less of a lat exercise it becomes. The lats and the abs need to actually work together to make it a lat bias pull down. So what do I mean by that? So when I'm going to start the movement of the lat pull down, I'm going to think about initiating the movement by flexing my abs. So let's just say I was pulling down right now. I would think about flexing my abs and then pulling down. You guys can clearly see that even when I don't even pull down or anything, I just flex, and you guys can see like my lats kind of pop out already. So I flex my lats and then I pull down. That way we can make it a lat bias pull down. So I'll just demonstrate a couple of reps for you guys. So you guys can see the block is keeping my chest from arching and it's allowing my shoulders to protract a lot more. And then from here, all I'm thinking about is pulling my elbows down to my hips. As another cue for this movement is think about pulling your elbows down to the floor. But the floor pulling cue is dependent on your own position. So probably from up here, I can think about pulling down to the floor slightly, but I still need to think more about pulling towards my hips. Another good cue would be to pull and think about your chest going into the pad. Think about your chest running forward as you pull. How does that look, Mo?
Great.
Good. So guys, so another idea of, another variation of the actual lat pull down is a unilateral pull down. Now why would unilateral work come into play? For a lot of people that actually have functional scoliosis like myself or a muscle imbalance, something unilaterally will work a lot better. So for example, for me, when I do double-handed stuff, usually one side takes over and the other side is just kind of like there for decoration. So I know that similar stuff happens with Mo. So it's a great tool to actually understand on how to use a movement unilaterally, but still get the same thing out of it, if not even more. So same idea, same distance. I'm just going to clip the clip of the D handle in so I can line it up perfectly with my lat. And then from there, I'm going to take a seat. And I'm going to have the same intentions of thinking about pulling my elbow down towards my hips. I'm not thinking about doing this, because this is more of a back pull down, kind of, so this is just hitting your upper back more. I'm going to think about pulling down and think about stabbing my elbow towards the floor. That's how you can bias it to actually hit your lats. But remember to brace your abs before you pull. So before I even start, I'm thinking about initiating my abs, going into the bench and pulling down at the same time. And then remember, as you go up, think about pushing your shoulder blade forward. So it's about protracting upwards. Alright, and now Coach Mo is going to show us your last bilateral exercise that you can use to bias your lats in a pull down. So guys, this is your last bilateral exercise that you can use to pretty much hit your lats as much as possible. So we got Mo holding the wide grip, not wide grip, I mean the almost shoulder width grip handles. So he sits down. The very first cue I'm going to say, do you want to let go of that because you're going to get tired? So the very first cue is, when you sit down, the idea is to try and get the pull down to go from an overhead position to more of a front position pull down. And how do you do that with something that's above there? If you can't change that, you can just change yourself. So the very first thing is think about getting your lower back back. And I like to even cue rounding your upper back slightly. Now from there, you can clearly see that the line of resistance lines up a lot better with his lats. Now from there, he's going to have those handles in his hands. And the first thing that he's going to think about is holding his abs hard and bringing that ribcage down. And he's going to think about pulling those elbows down towards the floor. And we can clearly see these ginormous lats right here. These are actually functioning. Now, again, so on his way up, as he lengthens, it's important to not let your ribcage flare up. So you want to stay around it, and you want to keep your ribcage down, and then you want to pull it down. How's that feel?
Great.
Good?
A lot of stability needed by the abs.
Yeah. So the limiting factor on this is the fact that your abs have to work extremely hard to stabilize. So when would it be probably a smart idea to add this in? When you actually want the stability of your abs to play in. So like, for example, if a good example, I was going to say, if I have an athlete that needs his abs working at the same time, he like an abs is an issue for him, yeah. I would definitely just try and involve this, just because it does also involve his abs. But if my goal was truly to train his lats, take his lats to failure, probably using a bench would be the smarter idea.
One of the most common mistakes people do is, again, as Imad said, flaring the ribs.
Yeah. So you guys can clearly see, as he flares up, the line of resistance lines up towards his upper back. And the more he actually rounds and actually brings that ribcage down, you can see the line of resistance lines up more with his lats. Yeah, so when he does that, you can see humeral extension, and he's going past his body, so it's probably going to bias his upper back and his rhomboids a lot more. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys on the next one.